Hello, Childfree family and friends. Welcome to Childfree Family's presentation, Let's Talk Money on Childfree Finances. This is episode 13, Uncertain Times and Inflation. I'm Cody Hetzel, founder of Childfree Family. And for those who don't know, it is a micro social network for child-free people. It has your basic social media stuff with a profile, and you can make friends. There's an awesome feature with a map, and you can locate other child-free people that might be near you or in places you want to travel, and you can ask them questions and get some information from the child-free down low. That is what that's there for. I'm also a co-founder for the Childfree Convention. I got my throwback Childfree conference shirt from last year on. It is a free international event. We've got this year in 2022, almost 60 speakers, 24 topics. It's a 2-day event taking place July 30th and 31st. So go to childfreeconvention.com for more info on that. But today I'll be joined by Dr. J Zigman. Hey, Dr. J. Dr. J and his wife are child-free. He has a PhD in adult learning from the University of Connecticut and is a certified financial planner. A key thing to note about Dr. J is he's a fiduciary, which means he must put the needs and interests of his client ahead of his own. It's always a good thing. And on top of that, he is an advice-only and fee-only certified financial planner. So in other words, he's paid for his time by his clients. He doesn't receive any commissions, incentives, kickbacks for selling products or recommendations, things of that nature. So they pay him for his time and advice, and he helps them learn how to manage their own finances, including some investing if needed. Dr. J, how are you?
I'm good. I just realized we're on our 13th show and you're talking about when things go wrong. Like, did you do that intentionally, Cody?
Well, in some cultures, the number 13 is lucky. So who knows? It depends, the glass half full.
So everybody that's watching, he's got a 2021 shirt on, but we are here in June of 2022, which if you watch the news right now, it kind of feels like it should be a 13th show. I don't know.
Oh, well, hold on. Before we get too far into this, let's knock out this disclaimer, because what we're talking about with these things, the following views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please seek the advice of a professional to aid in your financial decisions. So with that out of the way, we can talk some jibber jabber here. I mean, uncertain times, it really just depends. Like there's all kinds of talking heads on, the mainstream media, on, if you go to YouTube or whatever, there, people literally make a living just typing it, all the doom and gloom that's coming down the pipeline. Like even when everything's going great, they're like, well, the bubble's coming, it's coming. So everyone wants to be right and say that they called it. Like people love to say this, or they knew this was coming. They called 2008. They called, there's no way you could have called what happened in 2020, but some people would say they did.
Well, and Cody, the way they say it is, they predicted 10 of the last 2 recessions. It's just like, if I always say the market's going down, I'm just right. At some point.
throw a dart at the calendar and years and be like, hey, whatever, 2044, not gonna be a good year.
Well, so the problem is that we know we're always gonna have this roller coaster. It's guaranteed. That's always what it's been. It's always what it's gonna be. That's my assumption, at least. Well, when it's gonna be bad, I don't know. So I was speaking with a client the other day, and they said it this way. I asked them, I said, hey, how are you doing? The market's been up and down, and, are you stressed? And they said, well, no, I'm not. And I said, well, why? Like usually I get people freaking out. And they said, well, I look at you like a flight attendant. If the flight attendant's not freaking out, I'm not freaking out. If the flight attendant freaks out, I'm freaking out. And I'm like, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
But I think it's a challenge. I mean, there's a lot of people losing sleep right now, and that probably is not a good thing.
Yeah. Well, that leads us to really our first talking point here, is just to step back, take a deep breath, read the room. Look at all the factors that are going on out there. Is this just, the regular ups and downs, or is there truly something that's making external changes on internal things?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a news junkie, and I don't know. I don't think it's good for me. Like, that's just kind of the reality of it. Is if you want to find the negative, you can. And we get into the social media echo chambers and all that. And then I realized, so I spent a lot of my time working as a medic and in public service. And the first thing we do is we go to a place and go, all right, take a deep breath. What do we got going on? Let's handle it. And I think it's a lot harder when it's you personally than when it's other people. I worked as a medic and seen some bad stuff and it's worst days of their life. But for me, it was a shift. I'm like, my record was 3 shootings in one night. I mean, that's a rough night. But you know what? I can handle each of those individually and just handle it. Well, finance is the same thing. You look at it all together at once and like it overwhelms you. Are you overwhelmed right now, Cody?
I'm not, because mentally I plan for the chaos. I know how human nature is. People are going to panic and they're going to, sell. The stock market does crazy things like, gas is hitting all-time highs, yet oil stocks go down. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. But I plan for that mentally.
So I had somebody the other day. I was talking to them and they said, hey, we were talking about finances. Of course, that's what I do. And they said, are you, speaking to me, she said, I don't know if I should ask you this, but I said, okay, go ahead. Are you anxious about your financial plan or your money? I'm like, no, I'm anxious. That's a separate question. My finances are fine. There are moments that anxiety just creeps up. It's just what it is. I think that's a human thing. And I probably need to figure out mindfulness or something to help with that, but not about money. There's a lot of things going on in the world, but not that I have to worry about because it's part of the plan and expected.
And unless you have to pull your money out of the market right now, like just breathe. Like you don't have to do anything. Like it's a long-term game. So unless you had to take your money out today or tomorrow, then you might be a little worried. But
so if we follow the old Jack Bogle routine, and for those who don't know, he founded Vanguard and a lot of cool things. His way of saying it was, don't just do something, stand there. Like, and that's the opposite of what people are thinking.
Yeah.
I just need to do something.
Yeah.
Breathe, stand there, figure out if your plan is messed up, then make adjustments. But the worst thing we could do, and I've seen quite a bit of this lately, you go to the internet and go, what should I do? And I'm like, oh, this is going to get bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like one of the biggest things people are definitely searching now, inflation. 2 years ago, nobody would have cared what was going on with inflation or even known what it was, but a little different today.
Well, and part of that's because, so you and I are about the same age. I'm 44. And in our life, really the last big inflation was in the 80s, and I was small. Okay. I was, 6, 7, 8 at that time. So we really haven't had high inflation in our lifetimes. And it's become like a boogeyman. Oh, no, all your money. Well, it is. It's going to hurt your money. But we have to think about what's going on. And people get wrapped up in, well, is it a CPI number and this number? Look, all I know, I like eating beef. I'm a meat eater. And that's gone up like 40 to 50% per pound, just at the store. Well, they say, well, groceries went up 10%. Cool. But what I eat went up more. I'm just joking about it, but it's things like that.
Yeah.
Gas has got a lot of things in it, and other things, housing. Everything seems to have gone a little bit crazy. But the question is that normal or not? And it kind of is.
Yeah.
If you have high demand and low supply, prices go up. Now, there's a debate right now, is inflation because of systematic problems or people taking profit? My answer is yes. I think it's a little of a column A, a little column B. But the challenge with inflation is your purchasing power is going down. So there's also this thing called shrinkflation. So one of my favorites was this: is Doritos took 5 chips out of the bag, every bag, because of inflation. Now, you and I we're not counting the chips, but we're literally getting 5 chips less.
Yeah.
For the same price.
Yeah, or the little the net weight on there. If you look at them, they will have changed. I like to shop sometimes by the price per ounce, because if you look at the big number, which is massive, but then the price per ounce is right next to it, and it's a little teeny thing, you can see the difference in the valuation right there.
Well, and what happens is people go, well, I should get a better raise because of inflation. Maybe, but that happens a year later. So I've already been paying for an increased price for a year. I'm paying more per ounce than Cody's because he's over there like doing the math on everything. I'm just buying the bag, but I'm paying more per ounce, and then my raise catches up a year later. So I've already been paying that bill forever.
Yeah.
And I think the other challenge is this is one of the few times when inflation's high where if I just put the money in my mattress and just cash, it's actually going down in value. What I bought for $100 last year, what I buy for $100 this year, I'm going to get less of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. So I need to have some type of financial plan to at least keep up with inflation.
Yeah.
But I also don't need to, lose sleep every night over, oh, it went down by another 1/10 of a point. Like the news this week, they were talking about 0.3 of a point. I'm like, dude, go to the grocery store. You know what inflation is. You don't need the points to get there.
Yeah, and for folks, this is live right now before it gets archived and put on YouTube later. So if you have questions, comments for Dr. J or I, throw them in the comments and we'll try to get to them. One thought, and just how I mentally prepare on things like inflation. People, you see, people complaining. It's like, oh, well, you can go and flip burgers and make $15 an hour now or whatever. Like the pay rate is going up in a lot of areas where it should have been going up slowly over the years. Now it's taking a leapfrog up in value, and some people might say that the inflation we're seeing now might be propped up by everyone getting increased wages. As you said, go get a raise. Well, if everybody goes and gets a raise, then they have more money to spend, and the prices potentially won't go back down because we all will get used to it. And so,
I mean, some of that's normal unless we get to deflation.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to see the price go down. We haven't seen deflation in forever. I mean, not that it can't happen. It's just we haven't seen it in many, many years. And this is where I was saying, Cody, it's half systematic and half profit taking is my feel. Yeah. There might be some systematic on wages and other things, but realistically, wages are pretty messed up in some area. I'm in Mississippi where minimum wage is still $7.25. That means you're living on $15,000 a year. I have no clue how you do that. I do budgeting for a living, and I go, I don't know.
Yeah, and the myth is that all child-free people have nothing but money. There are a lot of child-free people that are paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah. So I think what's happening is there's some systematic things that need to get fixed, but it's also just, we were pent up demand. We were all closed down for 2 years, and then everybody goes out and buys stuff. That's why car prices went through the roof. By the way, coming back down now.
Yep. Yep. So let's talk a little bit about interest rates, talking about ups and downs.
Okay.
Read the room.
they're debating this Fed interest rate raise this week.
And this is why there's a lot of fluctuation in the stock market, because it's going to bounce based on what people speculate and then what actually happens.
So what's going to happen, by the way, the stock market's all over the place because of all the things we're going to talk about, not just one.
Yeah.
So interest rates are a fun one. So the theory is we raise the rates so people start borrowing less and start buying less, which brings inflation down. The downside of this, just about every time, we overcorrect, which pushes us into a recession. That's kind of like the cycle. That's the normal stuff. So the problem is, if we don't raise inflation in interest rates, inflation will go through the roof. And if we raise interest rates too fast, then everything shuts down and everybody loses their jobs. And by the way, there is no answer on this one. Like economics professors will fight this one all day long on theories and structures and what should be the target rate, all over the place.
Yeah.
Here's what it means to you. It means all your debt's getting more expensive. Okay. So if you have credit cards, they're up a point to 2%, 1 to 2% already this year.
Odds are in their contract, they can raise that rate whenever they want.
Up to maximum. It's usually like 26, 27% in state. But they already are. And actually, they may have raised it so high that your minimum monthly payments are going up. And your minimum monthly payment may not even cover the interest at this point. Other ones, home equity line of credit, those are going up because those are variable. Mortgage rates. So we're in June of 2022. Just today, they were talking about 6% mortgage rates, where a year ago, I bought my house a year ago in July, 15-year mortgage, 2.18, 2 1/8 on the interest rate. And now we're up at 6 on a 30-year. be a little less than 15, but I mean, it's doubled over a year.
Yeah.
Okay. So that becomes a huge issue. Debt gets more expensive as inflation is eating away from our money on the other side.
Uh-huh. And so this diving into the big R word there, the recession, people are terrified that it's going to come and what it's going to do to the economy, what it's going to do to their life.
So I love this. When it's going to come.
Yeah.
The truth is, we might already be in it. We don't know because the measure always lags. So the measure is we use GDP, gross domestic product. It's bottom line, everything we put out. And go, oh, did it go up or down?
Yeah.
If it goes down for 2 quarters, we're in a recession. Usually that's tied to employment's the big issue. People start losing their job because companies are cutting off. Uh-huh. I saw a couple different companies today alone. They're like, oh, I'm cutting 18%, 10% of my workforce. It's already happening. The companies are already telling you that. Whether we're actually in a recession or not, I don't know. Cody can ask me again in a month or two, and I'll tell you whether we actually are in there. Now, interesting part of this, a little side note, I don't know if I want to poke this bear, but that's okay, is our economy is all based on growth. It has to have constant growth in order for everything to keep going up. This is the consumerism, the capitalism, whatever you want to call it. Part of the problem is us child-free folks.
Yeah, we're monkey wrenching that system.
Yeah, because we're not having the kids to go buy stuff.
Which I've seen a lot of articles coming out, especially recently, basically throwing that weight on our shoulders, so to speak, saying that people aren't having enough kids and bringing up the declining birth rate again, and how whatever X% of people who are childless that currently don't have a kid plan on not ever having a kid. There are all kinds of stats and figures they're trying to put out there to scare people into saying that we as basically child-free people are doing the wrong thing and we're going to hurt the economy and the country and the globe and the mankind into the future.
That's why I said I almost didn't want to poke this bear. But so I just worked on an article the other day. The Street put it out, and it was the new number for last year was $286,000. What it cost to raise a kid for 17 years.
Okay.
So you and I are saving over $250,000, but that's for one kid. But that's also $286,000 that's not going into the market, into buying stuff.
Per person, per kid. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, it does add up. I mean, Japan and a few other places are already looking at this. What happens if your population doesn't grow? I don't know what happens. To be honest, I don't know that I really care that I'm not inflating the market and inflating, taking it away from the environment and all the other parts that go with it. But the recession, we had 1 million people die from COVID. And the replacement rate is not up.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's again, the topics that the post and the clickbait, I call it basically, it's just a rewrap story with the new headline. They just want you to click on it to read it. But yeah, they're becoming more and more popular that I'm seeing out there. But anyway, so
just to go one back to the recession for 1 second, biggest worry for you is losing your job.
Yes.
This is not the time to be jumping jobs. If you got a nice secure job, you've been in forever and it's not going nowhere, probably okay to settle in for a little bit of time until everything calms down. Uh-huh. But if you're in one of those places where you're like the low person on the totem pole and you've only been there for a couple of weeks and your job's at risk, well, then we may have to skill up and try to start thinking about other jobs, because that's the issue with recession.
Yeah.
The recession is the job issue.
Yeah. And we'll dive into that in a few minutes here. So let's just keep going with some market fluctuations. We just touched on it just a second ago. Like, it's up, it's down, and no matter when you watch this in the future, the market, it can easily go up 300 points and it can drop 500 and then it can go up 800. Like there's no reason to it in a lot of cases.
So I watch the market just because I have to for my job. If I didn't, I would check my 401k every quarter or so and just go, that's kind of where it's at. If you watch it day to day, if you watch your 401k or your retirement every day, you will have less hair than me. I'm just telling you kind of how it goes. You're going to lose your mind. Market fluctuations are normal. Okay. So the last 3 years, we've seen record returns, big numbers. And now what happens is the math says at some point that needs to come back down.
It has to. I mean, well, and think about it. it irks me a little bit when I see people using really any statistics from 2020 to validate anything happening now, because 2020 to me is like an invisible year. Like, whether it's crime statistics or whatever, it's like nothing was happening in 2020. Of course, all the statistics are higher versus 2020. We were literally in our house watching anything that was streaming at the moment. So, there wasn't a lot happening. And so, to have market fluctuations, it's been going up because, you see people like to post those memes of what gas prices were in 2019, really at the end of 2019 versus what they are today. And they want to pretend it was because of political reasons. No, it's because nobody was driving and buying gas. That's the reason it was that cheap.
Well, and you know what? Bottom line is, I don't have any control over that.
Yeah, no one does. Okay?
So I have to, in my investing plan, go, this is what I expect my average return to be over time. Not going to use numbers here because that depends on you and your own split. But whatever that average it means I'm going to have some up years and going to have some down years. What it does mean, if this is a down year and you need to retire this year, you might not be retiring this year. And that's hard to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if it's down right now and you're going to still afford to retire, well, then you're probably in a good place. So it becomes normal. And I think the analogy I like that's used quite a bit is you only get hurt if you jump off the roller coaster. Okay. If you ride it, the bigger question is, and we'll get to this, is whether or not your plan makes sense. Mm-hmm. But that market fluctuation, completely normal. Mm-hmm. What they call it, bear market, down 20%, all this, that's fun terms for media and for records. But it's doing what it normally does so far.
And the market is primarily, it's based off of projections, and people are projecting. And so if they don't hit their numbers of what they projected, a stock would do, it's going to go down. If it does better than the projection, it's going to go up. But it's just a projection, and that's it's just again kind of throwing a dart and seeing where it hits, and then so don't panic, guys. Ladies, guys, everybody. It's just it is kind of what it is right now. Just go along for the ride, but. Political instability. There's a little bit of that going on.
Okay. So I actually did some research on this. Presidential elections are often one of those kind of like, whichever side you're on, if the other person wins, the world's coming to an end. Like that's always if so-and-so wins, the market is, the data says it doesn't really matter. There are some trends, but it really not much. We talk about wars. I already said I'm 44. America's been at war since 9/11, so that's most of my life. What's going on in Ukraine right now is rough. It has a lot of impact on the market, but it's all kind of normal. The social unrest, all that. You ever wonder where my anxiety comes from? It's watching the news on a lot of that stuff. Because there's a lot of weird things going on, and we are here in the middle of June and waiting for the new Roe versus Wade ruling in the next couple of weeks. So the Childfree folks have had some issues. There's a lot of social and political things going on. Financially, it's kind of normal. And I hate to say it that way because it's really weird out there, but financially, it's normal.
Yeah, the markets are kind of doing what they do. Yeah. And it's not all based on, when we say political instability, it's not necessarily, your political opinion. It's the entire globe of what's going on, like even projecting what's going on with potentially like China and Taiwan and the US, like looking even ahead at that. Who knows what's going to happen, but it's there. It's just a wake that we're watching that it might happen. Nothing might happen.
So let me give you a fun one on this one, Cody. Warren Buffett, for those who don't know, Berkshire Hathaway, he's one of the richest men in the world. He put in his letter that the biggest issue for Berkshire Hathaway would be a nuclear war. So he was asked in his annual meeting, all right, Warren, you said this is the biggest issue. What are you doing to prepare for it? He goes, nothing. He says, if a nuclear war happens, you got much more problem than your portfolio.
Yeah, and that's kind of another way I look at it too. It's like, if everything goes, if inflation goes crazy and the dollar goes, like if the market crashes, like,
we're all there.
We're all gonna be in it together at that point, and it'll. Well, we got a quick comment here. Tamara, I appreciate your comment on how the news blames child-free people for economic issues. It's nice to hear someone not buy into that narrative. I definitely don't buy into that narrative. Hopefully no other child-free people buy into it. And maybe by us talking about it and putting the spotlight back on there and saying, look, it's just talking heads. That's all it is.
So Cody, I'll add the link afterwards, but I did an article with The Street. They were doing on that 286 number of, what it costs to raise a kid. Mm-hmm. And my response was, and then you wonder why people don't want to have kids. Like I said, okay, there's all this other stuff about it medical and all, but it's more than $250,000 problem. Uh-huh. And it was interesting to see the reporter go, huh, yeah.
But who's going to take care of you when you're older? Like they'll just go back to the old bingo game with this. It's like, yeah. But all right, so let's get back to the basics and assessing your budget.
So Cody asked me about this. What do you do when things are uncertain? My answer was you do the basic stuff. The first one is budget. Do you have one? I mean, It doesn't matter which budget. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It's a budget. If you don't have a budget, this inflation is going to kill you. It just is.
Well, and you may not even see it coming if you're not tracking figures, your grocery store, your gas. If you're not tracking what you're spending every month, you may not see, like you said, meat prices 40%. You knew that because you spend that and you track that. Other people might just, be not adjusting what they're buying. They're still buying the same grocery list, the same shopping experiences they're doing, even though they might want to cut back or curtail or look at different options.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be super fancy. So like my wife and I've got some key categories I watch. Amazon is one of them, dining out, a few of those others, because those are discretionary spending. But I encourage people to look at their budget in 4 categories: must, shoulds, coulds, and won'ts. Your musts are what keeps the roof over your head, the lights on, the basic groceries, and we require. You need to know that number, because if you lose your job, you got to cover that just to live.
The replacement income that you have to bring in, basically. It's like, what's the bare bones that I need to keep my, head above water here?
Yep. And if you think we're going into rough times, which I happen to think it's likely, I mean, I don't have a problem with that thought, then we need to cut back on those coulds and move them to won'ts. Sorry, DoorDash, you're first to go. It sounds silly. We all have these habits add up pretty quickly, and we need to start building our emergency fund to go with that.
Yeah. And so paying off debts.
Yeah. So this is one of those that gets me more hate mail than anything. But if you can get to a point where you're living without debt, your budget's very easy. This is the time. Your interest rates are going up. And for those that have student loans, those are restarting in a couple of months, or at least that's the current plan. Those debts are going to get you. So what happens is, while you have this inflation, you've already stolen from your future from your debts. Those two are going to start coming in on you. So this has to be a priority. When I say a priority, it means more than whatever's left over, I'll put towards my debts. No, I have a goal: $6,000 towards my debts. That's $500 a month. I have to, and it has to be a priority, and it has to start with locking your credit cards and not taking any more debt. Now is the time to make those cuts so that if there's a problem, you're good.
Yeah. And it's a myth. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a myth that you have to keep using your credit cards to keep your credit score going up or where it's at. Some people worry, if I stop using my credit cards, my credit score is going to drop. Not necessarily true.
So my answer on that one is put your Netflix on it and have it automatically paid off.
Yeah.
$20 charge in and out.
Yeah. Something you can easily do, and then there you go.
I think the bigger thing is, if you have a large debt load and then you lose your job, you are really screwed. Yeah. Okay, so we need to figure this out now. I know people want to talk about investing, but my way of looking at it, you should pay off your debts before you invest. You're paying 16, 20%, whatever it is on a credit card. You're not going to make that in the stock market on a regular basis.
Well, and then you throw in the things like inflations and everything going on. You might be like, oh, well, I can invest, and if I can make 10% or whatever magic number you want to throw out there versus my X percent of debt that I have, and you're trying to race one against the other. Well, now you've got something like inflation that's just going up, and it'll throw you out of whack.
And what's happened is, and I don't get credit for coining this term, it exists, but really what we've been doing is we've been out earning our stupid. We've been earning enough money that we can get away with stupid mistakes. That goes away when inflation and recession and all this other stuff hits. Another Buffett, When the tide goes out, you know who's skinny dipping. That's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah.
You have to get your home solid. And when I mean your home, I mean your budget, your debts, the basic of finance before we get to anything else.
Celebrate zero. If you can get to zero debt, like that is a huge celebration. If your net worth is $0, that is an accomplishment, and you can go up from there.
Yeah.
So, let's do just a gut check with risk levels.
Yeah. So I ask people whenever they come to me, what's keeping you up at night? And I usually get well, it's not exactly keeping me up, but, and then they like line up 10 things that's worrying them.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, you really are losing sleep, but you don't want to, okay, if it's not sleep, whatever it is. The reality is our bodies are really good at telling us when something's wrong. And if you're up at night or getting up early, can't sleep, that tells me you got too much risk somewhere. Now, debt is a risk. Not having insurance is a risk. Not having a budget is a risk. Investing is a risk. Your job is a risk. You have to control those to a point where you can sleep. If you are literally checking the market every 20 minutes and worried about it, you've taken on too much risk.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that's hard for people to get here.
Yeah. And so is your budget at risk? We kind of dipped our toes into this a moment ago, but looking at your budget with inflation, things going up, if you have a current budget, are you towing that line every month and you're just like hitting, net zero of dollars that nothing goes into savings, nothing goes into investing, nothing goes in your 401k. You're just right there.
I read an article recently. I can't remember the exact numbers. Either 40 or 50% of people making over $250,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck.
And some people are like, oh, boo-hoo. Like,
this is not about I can make more money and out earn my stupid. It's the question of, do you have room in your budget? If you don't, something needs to change now. Because things are tough. I mean, inflation's tough and jobs are tough, but they can be worse. And the only way to be prepared is to fix your budget now. What do you have to cut out? Or do you got to go start delivering some pizzas and, driving for Uber or something? By the way, nowadays, a lot of good second jobs. I mean, you can go work at, Lowe's or Home Depot and get benefits to go with it. Whatever it is to make that budget work. Also, the child-free folks might mean taking in a roommate or sharing housing, or I don't know. About being creative, but the time to do that is now versus when you're in trouble. Yeah.
And so is your debt holding you back?
Yeah. So this one is a reality check. People go, well, I have good debt. No.
The keyword is debt.
Like that's the marketing. That's like saying, well, it's low fat ice cream. It's still ice cream. You should have the good ice cream anyway. Like it's just, I think the challenge is, you have, by having debt, bought something in the past you're paying for now. And that's stealing from your future. And that means we got to get working on it. And student loans, big one of this one, planning on them starting up again, maybe some forgiveness, who knows? Got to have a plan because that's going to completely throw off your budget in just a couple months. Yeah.
And I see it come up a lot of times in some forums. Should we pay off our house? Like we have the ability to put more into it. We can pay it off in 3 to 5 years versus like the 15 to 10 years, whatever might be on the loan. Should they pay it off early? It's an individual question, but it just comes down to, again, kind of what's your level of risk, with looking at what's coming down the pipeline with, instabilities. If you believe that's going to happen, well, not having a mortgage is a big weight off your shoulders because you don't have a mortgage payment.
Well, and I think we'll spoil our lead, but we're going to talk about renting versus owning in a future topic. But I'll tell you, I do have a mortgage on my house. It's my only debt I have. I already told you I pay 2 1/8, which is very low interest. I've still got a lot of extra money going towards paying off the mortgage. I can make more in the market. I know I can. That's what I do. So I'm not so worried about that. But I'm paying off the house because then my risk goes down. The number of houses that are foreclosed that have no mortgage on it is 0. And my monthly expenses go to damn close to 0. It's groceries and light bill. And dog food. And we got 2 mastiffs, so that's pretty expensive.
That's where all of it's going. Well, and it's kind of learning from our mistakes, looking back at 2008 and looking what's happening with the housing market now. Housing prices are going crazy, up, 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 up. It did that not too long ago, and everyone seems to be forgetting. Like, don't leverage the good fortune coming your way, because a lot of people lost their shirts and lost their homes literally because they over leveraged their properties, because they kept being told your house is worth more, your house is worth more, and they were borrowing against it because this is good debt, and they got burned. And so just with that in mind, so insurance, are you overinsured? Are you underinsured? Child-free people have a little bit of a different foothold on this in some states.
Yeah, so here's the chance to look at it and go, well, do I need life insurance? Is anyone counting on my income? No? Well, then maybe I don't. But you know what? I need health insurance.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I got people, well, I'll take chances on the health insurance. I'm like, no. Because the problem is you can get hit by a car walking across the street, or have a stroke or a heart attack, and your insurance bill is $1 gajillion. Uh-huh. So you want to make sure you have the right insurance. The other one that I talk a lot about with the child-free folks is disability insurance. You get hit by that car and you can't work for 6 months. What do you got for income?
Uh-huh.
And the answer is nothing.
Uh-huh.
So you've got to make sure you have the right insurance. And the reason why this comes into risk is what we're doing with insurance is we're passing the risk off to somebody else. We're saying, here, it's yours. By the way, since we talked about homes, another big one, because of inflation and cost of materials, most people are probably underinsured in their house, because you need to cover 80% of the house value to have full coverage. And my house, my house I bought, and when the insurance of what it would cost to replace it was a couple $100,000 more than what I bought it for, just because plywood is more expensive and stuff like that. So we have to make sure we have the right insurance, because that is passing our risk to somebody else. Uh-huh. The other one I hear a lot about with the child-free folks, it is a separate topic we've already done on, is long-term care. And passing off, hey, those last years of my life and insure. And we had somebody ask a question, well, what happens if, I plan on 4 years of long-term care, but I live for 5? You took on the risk. Uh-huh. Like, you can insure as much as you want, but then at some point, you got to.
Insurance companies, they'll sell you the policy. If you tell them what you want to pay, they will sell it to you. Don't worry about that. If there's any insurance gurus out there, feel free to jump in the comments and give us your thoughts on that too. If you have a job, and once a year they have those insurance talks where they bring in their insurance people to talk about the current plan. As Dr. J mentioned, like, listen if they have the disability option, because a lot of times it can be a really good and a affordable plan, because you're a part of a corporation and they look at you as maybe not that big of a risk, and it can be a relatively inexpensive plan to get disability coverage for that just in case moment. And I'm not a big pusher of insurances, but Dr. J does raise up a good point there. If it's something that gives you a little bit of peace of mind, it might be worth something thinking about.
And if you have your own small business or you're a freelancer, you can still get disability insurance. You just have to get it yourself. And you're probably more at risk. So if I'm driving Uber and I crash my car, now I've lost my way of doing income and I'm hurt.
Yeah. And with side gigs, make sure that you are covered insurance wise for that, because I believe if you're driving your private car on your private insurance for Uber or DoorDash, I don't know if that's such a good idea.
Insurance, you're not covered unless you have the rider for commercial.
Feel free to chime in on that, but yeah. So investments, diversification, leverage, and tolerance.
So every time people talk about, it's upset times, it's uncertain times, they go to the investments. You'll notice I started with a whole bunch of other stuff first, because that's all the foundation.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the thing on the investments. There's a good chance what you invested in over the last 3 years is not necessarily the plan you should be in for the rest of your life. The market did some great returns over the last 3 years. I'm going to pick on one of them. And Cody's going to get mad at me for picking on it. That's okay.
That's fine.
Crypto has gotten killed in the past week. I mean, down 15% last night. Turns out it follows the market. Everybody's kind of making an argument that it's separate from the market. I don't know. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't buy crypto, but that plan that was working for you may not work now. So you want to make sure you have a diversified portfolio. That means you own a little bit of everything or a little bit of a bunch of companies. And one of the things to watch out for is the leverage. This is buying on margin, options, things like that. It is possible to owe more money than you have in your life. That's what options and leverage are doing. You're borrowing to invest. The other one I've seen, this is one of those scary ones, borrowing on your house to invest. People who have done that are hurting right now. Okay, so we can't be borrowing to invest.
Like I just mentioned, 2008. If you were there, remember it. Like, yeah, it was not a good time.
So the other part of the investments is you've got to invest to your risk tolerance. And here's how I work this. You only invest in things you understand. If the investment's keeping you up at night, either one, it's too risky, or two, you don't understand it. It's one of those things. Both of those need to get addressed. It's the question of, do you want your money to work or do you want it to be sexy? You want it to work, and you don't want to have to think about it. You want to go, meh, my plan's fine. It's down a little. It'll come back. I'm okay. But what you've done over the past few years may or may not work now.
Yeah. Yep. So is my job at risk or in danger?
Yeah. So we mentioned this a little in the recession. This is that gut check of, am I like on the cutting block? And you know what it is. So I worked in healthcare for a long time. And education, which is what I worked in, was always one of those that got first to get cut. Oh, we can't train any people anymore. I'm like, well, that sounds a little short-sighted, but okay. But you need to realize that if your job is one of those that's on that risk, you might have to reskill and retrain. The other one is, if you got the good solid job, this is not the time to jump unless you got someplace to land that is solid also.
And so let's talk a little bit about emergency funds.
So, okay, we set a budget, we paid down our debt, then we're talking about emergency funds. Because, by the way, if you have debt, that's an emergency that you should put your funds towards. Just want to throw that one out there. So our goal is 3 to 6 months of emergency funds. I work for myself, my own job. I need more like 6 months. My wife is a faculty member at a university. Her job is pretty steady. She could probably get away with 3 months. We end up in somewhere in between. Like it just it's not a magic number, but it's having enough to cover, what happens.
Yeah.
And that's also where your budget of your musts are going to be very important, because that is like the absolute minimum that you need to have is like 3 months of your musts. You really should have 3 months of your shoulds. But you need to figure out what makes you feel comfortable. That doesn't mean like put it all in the mattress. That means emergency fund for emergency purposes. And it doesn't mean you invest the emergency fund. Emergency fund goes in a high yield savings account, gets you like nothing on interest. That's okay. It's just there when stuff happens.
Yeah. And so that kind of ties us all into following your plan, which is kind of everything we just talked about in a box.
So the first one I love is do you have a plan? And most people go, a plan for what? Okay. So the CDC put out a guide of how to survive the zombie apocalypse. Very nice guide. And their whole point was, if you're prepared for a zombie apocalypse, you're fine for an earthquake, you're fine for fire, you're fine. Like, it's a plan, you follow it. You need something like that for your finances. All of those things we just talked about, risk, all the things we talked about, the what happens, you got to have a plan.
That. Yeah.
And you follow the plan. And what you do in a time like this is you check your plan and go, did I get something wrong? Like, did I not account for losing my job, or did I not account for whatever it is? And your plan is not going to account for everything, but most cases you're going to go, no, that's kind of in there. Then you just stick with the plan. If you have a plan, when stuff happens, you just follow the plan. If you don't have a plan, you start just shooting from the hip and just randomly doing things. That's when you get hurt.
Yeah, and I've seen that in a few forums and groups as well. It's people like, it's like the market, it's going down. Should I sell all of my stocks and put them into something else? And it's like, is that part of your plan? Is to freak out when everything seems to be not going well? Going back to having budgets.
So Cody, here's a fun one for you. So I do financial planning for a living. That's what I do. There's no surprise on that. People only call me in 2 times. Either like something awesome happened to them, like they won the lotto, or something happened to them that shook them. Okay. The financial planning world, we often see this where, they get anxious, they get scared, they reach out. Cool. I would have preferred we talk when you're nice and, calm, but that's okay. We can still talk you off the ledge. And this is where because I like financial advisors, like telling people, giving people advice and getting them to calm down. Like, if you have a good plan, you can just follow your plan. You don't need me, because you believe your plan.
Uh-huh.
What happens, a lot of people have been investing for years and not with a plan. They just kind of gambling, throwing it in there, and it's worked. God bless them. It's worked. Now, when times get tough, is when that plan gets tested.
Uh-huh.
And it's hard without.
Yeah. Yeah. So let us know in the comments, either now or on the archive, like, do you have a plan in place? If you're concerned about the current situations going on, it's like, what part of it is it the job? Is it the inflation? Is it the, your budget not being able to hold up over time? Let us know. But there's a little bit of a difference with us being child free. So how does being child free change your plan?
So Cody, let's go with the first one. When you got your child free card, like you got your shirt and all that.
Oh yeah. Came in the mail.
Did that make you rich all of a sudden?
It came with a huge box of gold bars. I mean,
I swear that's what people think. Like the shirt comes with the gold bars.
Yeah.
That's not real. In research for my book, Unfortunate Childfree Wealth, I found stories of people barely making ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
So being child free doesn't make us rich. That's an absolute. But you know what? It saves us $286,000 for raising each kid.
Mm-hmm.
It also allows us more flexibility. Now, this is one of those that's important for your plan. So let's say I'm living in one of those really high cost of living states where inflation is going up, but I can work from anywhere. It might be time to move.
Yeah.
Pick a low cost living state, or some people pick another country that's got its own challenges, but you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And people go, well, but what? So I talked to a couple who, at COVID, one of them lost their job. They had their house paid off, and they said, forget it. They moved from, I think it was Michigan, to Colorado and just picked it up, gone.
Mm-hmm.
Took the cash from the house, bought another house, tried it. We can do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Cody.
Well, my wife and I, we started our first business, and it's not because we didn't have kids, but not having kids sure made the decision a lot easier, because we didn't have to say, oh, well, little Timmy or Susie needs braces or has to go to, get this for school or doing this sporting event or wants to play an instrument. It's like, no, this is what we want to do, and this is what we're going to do it. So it's one of those cases where it's not, I did this because I don't have kids. It's like, it became much easier to make the decision because I didn't have kids. And so, whether it's changing jobs or locations or whatever, starting a business, there's a lot of more flexibility that we get being child free.
So the people with big money make money off recessions.
Mm-hmm.
They take advantage of situations, and we can talk about the ethics of that separately. That's like a whole separate topic. But you could do that.
Yeah.
If you're child free, now's the time to be creative.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you lose that job that you hated, you're living in a place you don't like, pack it up. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or whatever makes sure your plan fits, and do it. And I think we limit ourselves way too much when we really do have the flexibility, the time, money, and the freedom to do what we want.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And just trying to just looking at my personal situation, going back to 2008, that's really when I first dipped my toes into the stock market, because I saw everything was going down, I just started to do research at that point. It's like, learning what a blue chip stock is, like one of those, old faithfuls that's been around forever, which isn't always the case. There's a lot of them that actually go under as well. But you look at these great values, and that's where I started to invest at that point. And that it made sense for me to do that, because I didn't have to worry about, all the aforementioned things of a kid. And I had a very tiny nest egg that I was able to say, you know what, it's worth gambling this little percentage of it to see what happens. And it worked out, because, as we all see what happens in the stock market after 2008. But being child free, again, adds that flexibility. It takes a little bit of that weight off your shoulder, and it takes the burden away of having to have the, I don't know, to have that flexibility to make choices with your life and your income that is only going to affect you. If you're married, talk it through with your spouse or your partner, but it's going to affect them as well. But, again, gives you a little bit more leeway on the ability to invest.
So, and let me give you another one, Cody. I'm with you on the investing. By the way, if you're retiring in the future, or don't really want to retire 20 years from now, now's the time to buy stocks. Because they're on sale. But what happens with this? The other fun one, just want you guys to think about. So, recession hits. Often people come through and start offering severance packages for people to leave the company.
Mm-hmm.
They used to call us the golden handshake on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're child free, it might be time to consider those very closely. Hey, we'll give you 5 years of medical coverage and a year of salary if you leave for an early retirement or whatever they want to call it. Mm-hmm. It might be time to consider it differently than, hey, if you got kids, you can't take that chance. But if you're child free and they come by and offer you those numbers, see if it fits your plan and take it. Scary to do that without an answer of what you're going to do. But I used to the old school recessions. They'd offer a couple of years of salary just for you to go away because it was cheaper than them firing and laying off and all the other things that go with it. I don't know where it's going to be this time, but watch out for those nice packages.
Yeah. Here's a quick comment coming in. This is in your wheelhouse, Jay. Interesting chat. Would love to hear your thoughts on I-bonds as a part of a long-term saving and investment. Thank you for the comment there.
Yeah. So I-bonds were one of those things that prior to just about a year ago now, we never talked about.
Nobody cared about it.
It
not sexy.
It was something my grandfather literally bought us I-bonds on our birthday of $50 at a time. And that's what it was. Now, I-bonds, what it is they give you a percent, very low percent just for buying the bond, and then a connection to inflation. Okay. So what happens is as long as inflation's going up, every 6 months, the I-bond gets reset. And, we're 8-9% is what it's averaging. We're getting up there. It's a great return, risk-free. Downside, you got to be in it for a year. So you can't take it out. And then after the year, if you take it out, there's a penalty. They'll take back 3 months of the interest. Uh-huh. What I like to do for people, if you're out of debt, put some of your emergency fund in there. Like, the last month or two of it, keep 4 months in cash or whatever it is for you. And it's there when I need it a year from now. Uh-huh. Downside is they also reset every 6 months. You get a new rate. That's okay. The other part is you only do 10 grand a person. Because otherwise I put everything in it because the risk-free return.
It's beating the market. So.
The other fun one on that one, you have to buy it through treasury.gov, which is the government. And that site was built like in the 90s and never updated since then. And it crashes and goes down and one of my colleagues talked about is return on hassle, and the hassle of the website might not be worth it for some people, but for the return, it is a valid option.
Yeah. And so that gives us our chat on uncertain times and inflation. Hopefully everyone has gotten a little bit of info out of this. Again, feel free to leave comments. Myself or Dr. J will get to you with an answer on that. Dr. J, thank you for your time. Is there anything you want to chat about? Plug for yourself.
Sure. If you want to make a plan, need somebody talking over the ledge, that's what I do. Childfreewealth.com. I do offer a no-cost 60-minute intro, so we can just kind of chat. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to be there and help you. If I can help you, great. If I can't, that's okay too. So you can reach out. But the other thing is, if you go there on my blog, I got lots of articles on different things. I essentially do one for every time we do these topics, so it happens to connect to the video. I think my encouragement to people is, whether it's me or someone else, talking to someone and setting a plan is really important. Mm-hmm. If you can do all the plan yourself, great, and that's fine. If you're sleeping well, if your finances are keeping up at night, talk to an advice-only, fee-only fiduciary certified financial planner. If you're going to talk to somebody, not me, make sure you ask them how their plan is different because you're child-free. Mm-hmm. If they don't have an answer, move on.
Well, so episode 14 is coming up. We're leaving episode 13 behind. Episode 14, and we're going to talk about, do you really need a house? Do you really need to buy a house is the question. You need somewhere to live, but do you really need to buy a house? And so that's one of the little hot buttons out there right now, renting versus buying, especially with inflation and interest rates and everything we've talked about. So we'll dive into that a little bit more on the next episode. Hope you all can join us. Dr. J, thank you again, as always, for your time. We'll see everybody next time.